I'm starting to question if these are really upgrades because I don't really see it. So the A15 is one of Samsung's latest budget offerings, and what Samsung have been doing with previous models is offering a 4G version here and also a 5G model, making a few differences in screen resolution and cameras. But with this A15 model, 5G capability is the only difference, so why buy this one? I mean, literally, why? This phone has the exact same dimensions, weighs the same, has the same screen, same cameras, same battery size and charging, and the same RAM and storage options. So before I get to why you might buy this, let's look at those areas. The screen is a 6.5-inch 1080p 90Hz Super AMOLED display, and that AMOLED tech trumps other budget phones with LCD panels. It's a bright, vivid and contrasty display which looks really good. The only caveat being the pretty chunky bezel on the bottom and the rather dated dewdrop notch at the top, which, by the way, 13 megapixel resolution on that camera is pretty good if you give it enough light. And the phone weighs about 200 grams, which is about right for this sort of budget phone, and it's all made of plastic, again, right for this sort of budget segment. The battery is the standard 5000 milliamp hours in size with Samsung's mediocre 25 watt charging. And the battery life is great. A full day, not a problem. 2 days with light use is definitely doable. And I would imagine that the 5G model is going to be very, very similar, although the 5G connectivity might take a little bit more of a toll on the battery life, but it should be very similar. And RAM and storage is neither here nor there. 4 to 8 gigs of RAM with either 128 or 256 gigs of expandable storage. So personally, if you can track one down with 8 gigs of RAM, naturally that's going to be a better option. Okay, so what about the cameras? Well, both phones come with a 50 megapixel f1.8 primary camera, a 5 megapixel f2.2 ultra wide, and a 2 megapixel f2.4 macro camera. And photos produced on this A15 variant come out pretty decent. There's enough detail and Samsung's usual color pop. Finer areas can come out a bit lost, but you'd have to zoom in a lot or blow the photo up to see it. And the 5 megapixel ultra wide is about what you'd expect, pretty low quality with not much detail. Color, however, is pretty similar to the main camera, and the 2 megapixel macro shots, unsurprisingly, are even worse. And the video is capped at 1080p 30 from all cameras. But as usual, here are a few more photo and video samples from the cameras on the A15. And photo results from the 5G variant of this phone are going to be very, very similar, although there may be slight differences due to the processing using different chips. And speaking of chips, that's the main difference with these two variants. This A15 comes powered by the MediaTek Helio G99 processor, a pretty low-end and common use chip in this budget segment. And on paper, performance is similar to the Dimensity 6100 Plus found on the 5G variant, and being low-end chips built on efficient 6nm architectures, this helps with the overall efficiency of the phones. So initially, my experience using the G99 in this A15 was pretty underwhelming. I did find the phone was pretty sluggish and apps didn't open that quickly. But of course, having a screen protector on the phone, Samsung do have that option to increase the sensitivity of the touchscreen for that particular reason. And when I toggled that on, it made the responsiveness a lot better. But overall, it's a pretty low-end performing phone. And yes, of course, in the budget segment, you can't expect blazing speeds. But when I used the Blackview Shark 8, got a video for that, so check that one out, which uses the same G99 processor. I had absolutely flawless performance using that phone. It just felt a hell of a lot smoother than this A15. Now, whether that's just optimization of the software or just my experience using this phone, either way, it wasn't the most pleasant I've used. And as for software on the Galaxy A15, you get Samsung's One UI 6.0 slapped on top of the new Android 14. You get an up-to-date February 2024 security patch, so the phone is plenty up-to-date. What you'll get in terms of updates on the A15, I'm not 100% sure. There's not going to be a huge amount on their budget range. But as for One UI, it's the usual Samsung look. You get bright icons, you've got loads of customization options in the settings with themes and wallpapers and stuff like that. You do have a separate folder on the phone with a load of Samsung's own apps in there. They've got their own Files app, browser, messages app, and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of this stuff you can delete if you don't want to. But like I said, plenty of customization options with widgets, wallpapers, themes, icons, and your fonts and all that sort of stuff to really customize your phone to make it look how you want it to look. So as for the software on the A15, out of the box, pretty good. So that takes me to the question of why you would buy this 4G variant of the A15, and that comes down to price. Now, I found this phone for 96 quid, brand new off Amazon, and for that price and what you're getting, there's no way you can complain. The slightly sluggish performance, I think, is something that you can live with if you're only paying 96 quid for this phone. And I did recently look back on Amazon to see if it's still available at that price, and it is hovering around the £100 mark. So £100 for a 2024 brand new budget phone from Samsung, that is pretty good. But personally, I wouldn't say there were huge amounts of upgrades over the A14, especially in terms of the performance. But of course, you do get a more fluid 90Hz Super AMOLED display on this A15. But in terms of the overall performance and the camera performance from the A14 to the A15, I did find that the whole experience was very, very similar. And of course, the battery life as well. Check out my A14 video if you're interested in looking at that phone as well. But if you're not locked into getting a Samsung phone as your next budget phone, check out my other budget videos on my channel. See you there.